What is up, everybody? Hey, welcome to our Reflections podcast. I am Ryan Braley. I'm your host for this evening or this morning or whatever time of day it is when you're tuning in. I'm in studio with Mike Lauer, and we are wrapping up our series, like a little mini series here on different arguments for God. And I actually love this one. This next one we're going to talk about. Mike hates this one because Mike's a hater. So that's why I'm not giving him a microphone today because he's hating on my last argument. I love this argument. He's got some points though, but here's what it is. This is called Pascal's wager. There's this brilliant philosopher, French philosopher and mathematician. He was kind of a Renaissance man in every way. His name was Blaise Pascal, and he's just a really great guy. But he had this wager. He says essentially, look, it's really impossible to prove or disprove the existence of God, and I would agree with him. That there's really, you can have all these great arguments that I think really point towards this existence of a God, but it's hard to, you cannot empirically show that God, in fact, does exist. I think it's overwhelming, the evidence, the reason, and these kinds of things, but at the end of the day, you can't prove it. So he's like, fine. So he takes on this idea out of gambling. So therefore, if you're a gambler, you're going to love this argument. But here's what he says. Look, it's not possible to prove whether or not God exists. So really, we should bet on what would benefit us the most in our lives. So here's the argument, basically. He says, look, if God exists, and that's true, and you believe in God and believe in God's existence, you will gain kind of infinite happiness. If God exists and you don't believe, then it will be a dark time for you. So then he says, hey, if God doesn't exist, and you believe anyway, then you receive, again, your life is better off. So if God doesn't exist and you don't believe, then it doesn't really matter, but you still fail to reap these benefits in life while you're still alive. So, okay, I'll simplify it. You could simplify it with two kind of ideas. Number one, if God exists, then you're better off as a believer than a non-believer. And so if God exists, and here's the wager. He says, hey, look, take the wager. Lay the bet down that God exists and watch what happens. So, bet on and live as though God does exist. Sort of jump right in and become a believer because your life will be better off if God exists. Of course, that's the truth. And so for me as a Christian, I love this argument because for me, Jesus, and now again, this argument can get a little bit fuzzy when you talk about which God are we talking about, whether it's the Judeo-Christian God or other gods, but I'll just speak specifically to the Christian God. And if God exists, then I'm in. And Jesus has made my life infinitely better. I feel like the resurrection has brought dead things in my life back to life. Forgiving others is a great way to live. Asking for forgiveness, healing, reconciliation, taking care of each other, speaking up for the ones who can't speak up for themselves, loving my neighbor across the street and around the world. These all make life better for me. I live, I can go to bed at night. I don't tell lies, so I don't have to worry about if anyone's going to catch up to me or come knocking on my door about a lie I told. I've forgiven as much as I can and ask for forgiveness so I can sleep well at night knowing that I don't have these things hanging over my head. I give money away in an effort to do good in the world. I feel good about that. And I'm working to raise my children in these kinds of ways as well. And it's a better way to live life, as opposed to a non-believer who might live according to a different kind of philosophy or methodology or, have a different aim in their life. To me, Jesus is the ideal human, and he teaches us and shows us how to live as an ideal human. This is what it means to be fully alive. And so if God exists, you're better off to just jump in, go to church, put some money in the offering basket, volunteer, love your neighbor across the street and around the world, be kind to people, live like it's Christmas all year long. These kinds of things. And for non-believers, and I'm generalizing here, and Pascal is too, but it's just better than the life of many non-believers who oftentimes live in a variety of ways that can bring darkness or shame or other things in their life. And so he says, then, okay, that's premise one. Premise two then would be even if God doesn't exist, you're still better off. So premise one is if God exists, you're better off as a believer than a non-believer. And then premise two is even if God doesn't exist, you're still better off. Your life will still, you'll reap the benefits of this kind of living. How you spend your money, how you tell the truth, and how you show up on time and put your effort into all that you do, and how you try to love others and take care of them and have a sense of civic responsibility and social responsibility and take care of the planet and be good to animals and to babies and these kinds of things. It's even if God doesn't exist, you're better off living this way, following the ways of Jesus than a non-believer. And for me, that's the idea. That's why I actually follow Jesus, because to me, without that, I just don't know what else I would use as my compass or my guide, or what would be the thing that I'm tethered to, that I'm tied to, that gives my life direction. I want direction so bad. Like, I want to have some sense of meaning and purpose and where I'm headed. And without Jesus as like my aim, and without the sort of what it means if there is a God in the world, I feel like I would just be adrift and wandering to and fro and just sort of indulging in my own selfish ways and desires, which I think would lead me to lots of dark places. And so for me, and Pascal was saying, if God exists, or even if God doesn't exist, to live as though there is a God, and to follow, I would add, to follow in the ways of Jesus. Even if for some reason Jesus wasn't resurrected and wasn't the Son of God, it's still better off to live as a believer. So here's the deal. Take Pascal's wager. Dive in, jump in head first. Whatever the hurdles are, remove them, jump over them, and buy in and see what happens. Give it a year, 2 years, 3 years, and forgive others and ask for forgiveness and share your wealth and your resources and take care of your neighbors and help serve your communities and volunteer at church or at the nursing home down the road, or reading books to kindergartners, or be a coach for your son or daughter's team, or all the things, and follow, read the Gospels, and what is Jesus like, and how does he treat people and women and kids and the elderly and those on the outside of the religious walls in his day. How does he live? And try it on and see what happens. So there you go. That is the final argument for God. Again, it doesn't necessarily prove God's existence, and Pascal would say, hey, you can't really prove it, but give it a try and see what happens. And I would bet that it just might make your life a lot better, and you could sleep better at night. All right, love you guys. Peace. Hey, if you enjoy this show, I'd love to have you share it with some friends. And don't forget, you are always welcome to join us in person at Central in Elk River at 8:30, which is our liturgical gathering, or at 10 o'clock, our modern gathering. Or you can check us out online at clcelkriver.org. Peace.